Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and in today's video we're going to take a look at the talent system with a fun sort of video. We are going to take a look at the most raw power that you can get for a single talent point across all of the class and spec trees. I'm going to do this with the 10.1.5 version of the talent trees as well, because I wanted to include augmentation evoker talents, and I also wanted to include reworked or overhauled talents as well in this. But the basic idea, the premise of this is we're taking a look at the talent tree. We're excluding these square-shaped talents, these active abilities, because that seemed like a pretty hard thing to factor in. And we're instead just looking at like the passive talents that you can get and thinking from the perspective of like, okay, if you could steal one talent from any other tree, which ones would be the most interesting or compelling? Which of them would be the ones that you'd be looking at as like, wow, that's a point worth stealing. So, with that being said, I've broken down the talents into some broad categories of things you might consider for this hypothetical. We're going to start off with cheat death effects. So there's a bunch of different effects that will try and save you from dying that are scattered across the different talent trees of varying power levels. For instance, one of fairly low power level here is Angelic Bulwark on the Priest tree. When an attack brings you below 30% health, you gain an absorption shield equal to 15% of your maximum health for 20 seconds. This cannot occur more than once every 90 seconds. So not bad. Nice little piece of value, but we can do better than this. There's Battle-Scarred Veteran. This is a pretty powerful one on the Prot Warrior tree. When your health is brought below 30%, you take 80% less damage for 8 seconds, and healing you receive is increased by 100%. But this one can't occur more than once every 180 seconds, so that would be a downside of selecting this one. Cheat Death itself, the old classic, a rogue one. Fatal attacks instead reduce you to 7% of your maximum health. For 3 seconds afterwards, you take 85% reduced damage, but this can't trigger more than once every 6 minutes, so that's a long time for this. But it will save you from death, right? Whereas some of the other ones will sometimes not actually save you from the killing blow. Defy Fate is a new augmentation evoker one. This one is really looks quite good. This one also can only occur once every 6 minutes. It also prevents your death if you would take fatal damage, with diverting it into a nearby timeline. However, when it procs, it also restores health to you. It restores health to nearby allies. It restores 3 times as much to you as to the amount that it does for nearby allies. And it does it over 9 seconds with healing starting high and declining over the duration. Compared to Cheat Death, though, this doesn't give you the 85% reduced damage taken for 3 seconds, which is sometimes a very nice part about Cheat Death. So, some good, some bad on Defy Fate. Gift of the Golden Val'kyr. So this one is maybe a little bit cheating because it does have like a spec effect. But let's assume that you could proc the spec effect, or that part did work for this, which I haven't been fully consistent. I realize as I've gone through which talents I've included and excluded based off that criteria. So yeah, no tough luck. If you've got a talent that you think I've not included that would be really good for this hypothetical, do put it in the comments below, because I've looked through all the trees, but I'm sure that I've missed some good stuff. But anyways, Gift of the Golden Val'kyr, let's ignore the part about enemies hit by Avenger Shield reducing their remaining cooldown on Guardian of Ancient Kings, and just look at when you drop below 30% health, you become infused with Guardian of Ancient Kings for 4 seconds, which is a massive damage reduction. This cannot occur again for 45 seconds. 45 seconds compared to 6 minutes, 6 minutes, 3 minutes, minute and a half, right? So that is a wildly shorter cooldown, and Gift of the Golden Val'kyr is one of the best parts about Prot Paladin. It's a 2-point talent, actually, but you only need to take the 1 point as well to get this bottom line of text, and so that's what most Prot Paladins do. Really strong effect. It does, this, I'm kind of counting this because it gives you Guardian, I'm not assuming you would get Guardian of Ancient Kings as an active if you talented this, just that you would get to have it proc if you talented this. Similarly, okay, Last Resort is also, this is a little also sketchy maybe because, Metamorphosis form is a pretty Demon Hunter core thing, but sustaining fatal damage instead transforms you into Metamorphosis form. This may only occur once every 8 minutes, so 8 minutes is the longest we've seen on these, but really powerful, obviously turning into Giga Tanky Demon instead of dying, although maybe if you stole this as a Havoc Demon Hunter, you would be intentionally dying as a damage cooldown to turn into your Havoc DH demon. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. Then there's Nature's Guardian, one of the less powerful ones on this effect as well. It does also only have the 45-second cooldown, but this is just a 10% max HP heal that shamans get when brought below 35% health. There's Purgatory. Purgatory, over the seasons, there's been some times I've thought Purgatory was really strong and sometimes where I thought it was really weak. It is a 3-second cheat death, so it only protects you for 3 seconds, and it absorbs, as a healing absorb, all damage you would take while it's active, below 0%, and you need to heal yourself out of it, basically, which obviously DK has normally the ability to do this, but other classes could even Health Pot Healthstone out of a Purg if you stole Purgatory. It does also have a fairly short cooldown for like a full cheat death effect of 4 minutes, right? Something that will actually prevent your death instead of being something that just procs when you're low on health, which, you know, something that only procs if you actually would have died and saves you from dying. One of the problems with some of the effects like Battle-Scarred Veteran is that sometimes they'll proc too often and too early, and then you won't actually have them when you need them because they just, you know, if something procs at too high of a health threshold, it's just, you can't actually rely on it being available when you might actually need it because it's just on cooldown the whole time because it's always procking. And so the stuff like Purg, you know, a little bit better on that side of things. Okay, I think that is the end of our cheat deaths. So those are some... I'm sure I may have missed one or two, so if you've got a cheat death that you're a fan of that's in one of the talent trees, do put it in the comments below. But let's move on to our second category here, which is movement and utility. A lot of different movement options are scattered across the different talent trees. The biggest I could find is Fleet-Footed for Rogue, a 15% movement speed increase that you can pick up on the Rogue class tree. A lot of classes and specs have 5 or 10% movement somewhere around, but Fleet-Footed was the most I could find, so that one I think would be if you were interested in movement. The other option would be Pursuit for Demon Hunters, where again, I don't know how this would work for other specs, but Mastery increases your movement speed for specs that like Mastery could potentially be worth a lot of movement speed, depending on how exactly that hypothetically would work. But those seem to me to be the two main movement options if you were looking to steal a movement button, which I feel like if you gave people the option to take one talent point from another tree, very few would choose a movement button, but I think movement's kind of underrated, and these would maybe be the ones. All right, up next we have range increasers, which also I feel like a lot of people wouldn't choose. Acrobatic Strikes, again, for Rogue. 3 yards on your melee attacks. You've also got Astral Influence, which gives you all abilities range on the Druid tree. This one is actually tuned differently for Balance and Resto versus for Guardian and Feral. I don't think it's 99 yards for Feral. I think it's 1 for Feral and Guardian and 3 for Balance and Resto. And it's actually a 2-point talent as well. We're looking at just 1 point. This is assuming you have 1 free point to steal. So only that first point, which is 1 and 3, and then I believe it turns into 3 and 5, respectively, for the second point. But this affects all abilities, not just melee attacks, right? Lunge also has the melee attacks and abilities. This one is by 3 yards. Also giving you this, again, line of text that we're assuming would not be functional in this hypothetical about giving you Wildfire Bomb cooldown reduction. So another potential option there. All right, we're on to crit damage, and we're going to start off with the biggest sort of crit damage scaler that I could find, Elemental Fury. This has always been something that Elemental Shaman has had access to. 250% damaging critical strikes instead of the usual 200%. So that is, I think this point would possibly be the best one that a lot of specs could get. That's a lot of damage. That might be just the one. There are, however, some other crit damage nodes that I figured would be interesting to look at, just to kind of see, in some cases, the comparison to Elemental Fury. So you have Impale. The damaging critical strikes of your abilities deal an additional 10% damage. Know Your Enemy. Gain critical strike damage equal to 40% of your critical strike chance, which maybe actually... So this, again, this is a 2-point node, so only the first 1 point is only the 40%. Probably would never scale to be better than stuff like Elemental Fury, but this one's a cool effect on the Havoc tree that gives you, extra crit scaling. Sharpshooter. Critical strike damage increased by 2%. Not a point worth stealing from the Marksmanship Hunter tree, and a bit of a stark contrast to the, Elemental Fury tier of crit damage nodes. And in fact, it's not even a point that Marksmanship Hunters steal from their own tree, I believe. Spellweaver's Dominance. This one is a slightly nerfed version of Elemental Fury. It's a Devastation Evoker one that says your damage and crits deal 230% damage instead of the usual 200%. So that one a little bit worse, but still not a bad talent. And yeah, that's our crit damage. That's our crit damage options. Again, Elemental Fury. I think Elemental Fury is likely to be a candidate for best option to take in this hypothetical. All right, up next we have just some kind of raw stats options. Some of the barriers between some of these categories I've made have been pretty made up as well. So, you know, you're going to find some things in this category and a later one that you could maybe make arguments for being in the opposite one. But Armored to the Teeth for Warrior. Gain strength equal to 5% of your armor for that first point. At least is what it's saying on the... I think it's 4% on live, at least for prop, but maybe it depends on your spec or something, or maybe they buffed this. I don't know. I don't remember. Either way, gaining strength equal to a percentage of your armor. That's a powerful amount of stat. Desperate Times is a healing side of things. Increases healing by 10% on friendly targets at or below 50% health, which is the most important time to be healing people. I didn't pick very many healing passives. It's possible that I've missed ones that are higher power than this. There are a lot of healing passives on like off-healing specs, but they often use the like your healing surge deals extra healing, or like your word of glory, which obviously aren't going to work for our hypothetical here. You just kind of need something that does raw healing. And this was, I think, the best I could find, but I maybe was also not looking super hard for it. So if there's a better healing one, put it in the comments below for this. There's one-handed weapon specialization for any one-handed enjoyers. There's also some stuff on the Fury tree, like Single-Minded Fury and Reckless Flurry, but I think one-handed weapon spec has a strong argument because not only is it 5% increased damage with one-handed weapons, it's also 5% leech, which is a lot of leech. There are a lot of nodes on some trees that are like 2% leech, 3% leech. This one is 5% and also, 5% damage. That's a lot of gas for a single point. Reverse Entropy. This is a proc that Destro gets that is a 2.5 proc per minute, 15% haste for 8 seconds proc. So reasonably powerful little proc that you can find there. Up next is Veil Touched. Your abilities deal 5% increased magic damage. 5% increased magic damage. This is a Subtlety Rogue one that could potentially be an option. All right, let's move on to Stamina and Survivability. Our first option here is Brimming with Life. Maximum health increased by 8%. While you're at full health, reincarnation cools down 75% faster. Okay, that doesn't count. This is actually a... It's changed on the PTR so that you don't need reincarnation to be available for your maximum health to be increased by 8% as well, which is how it works on live. So 8% maximum health, all right, pretty good. That's a reasonably high amount. Let's see if we can do better. There's Demonic Embrace. This is a Warlock one. Stamina increased by 10%. That's not bad. Warlock, pretty powerful on the defenses, of course, as everybody knows. Stamina increased by 6% is an Evoker one, and there's a lot of 3% stams and stuff that are located in a bunch of trees. Draconic Legacy used to be like 2 points that would be 3% each, and has been changed to 1 point for 6% total. And there's a lot of specs that have like a 3% or 5% stam node somewhere around. Draconic Legacy was one of the ones I found fairly early on before I saw it got beat by, Demonic Embrace. Indomitable, though, beats both of those. This is on the Prot tree. Your maximum health is increased by 10%. And every 10 rage you spend heals you for 1% of your maximum HP. Obviously, not all classes use rage, but if you were a rage enjoyer, right, if you were like a Guardian Druid or something like this, that would be quite a powerful little effect to pick up. Sanctified Plates. Armor increased by 10%, stamina increased by 5%, and damage taken from area of effect attacks reduced by 5%. This one is also a lot of gas for a single point. It's only 5% stam instead of 10, but you're also getting 5% reduced damage taken from area of effect attacks and 10% armor, which is a lot. So pretty powerful for a single point over on the Paladin class tree. And Paladins actually do get to spend 2 points and pick up 2 points of this, which is nice as well. All right, we're on to damage scalers. This one is the line between this and the raw stats category from earlier. It's a little bit murky, but this one is critical mass. So this is a fire mage talent on the 10.1.5 PTR. Your spells have a 15% increased chance to deal a critical strike. You gain 10% more of the critical strike stat from all sources as well. So that could be good for certain types of spec. Dark Brew is a subtlety rogue effect that says your attacks that deal nature or bleed damage now deal shadow damage instead. and shadow damage is increased by 10%. So this, I could see this. You could do some cool stuff with this on a nature or bleed oriented spec. Even something like Assassination Rogue probably would do really well with Dark Brew. But like Feral Druid as well, something like that. I don't know. Ferocity. This is a survival hunter one that says all damage done by your pet is increased by 10%, which was better than any passive I could find for like BM or demo that didn't like name specific pets. But this is a lot of power that you could get for for a BM hunter from the serve tree. Might be a good option. Penitence. Your damage over time effects deal 10% more damage. This could be a good effect for any damage over time enjoyers, something like an Affliction Warlock to steal this. This actually comes from the Retribution Paladin tree. Surprising place to find an effect like this, but a lot of power from it. Winter's Blessing, your haste is increased by 8%. You gain 10% more of the haste stat from all sources. This is a Frost Mage 10.1.5 talent that also would potentially be a pretty juicy one to steal. I think Elemental Fury is maybe still better for a lot of specs than all of the ones we've just looked at here in terms of how much value it would provide, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe this sort of thing would actually eke it out and become the best option. Okay, now we are into niche effects or weird effects, interesting choices. Again, the line here was drawn a little bit fuzzily because, for instance, After the Wildfire here relies on you spending Rage, which very few specs do, so maybe I should have just excluded it in favor of something more generic. But something like a Prot Warrior with After the Wildfire, for instance, would be bonkers, which is every 200 Rage you spend causes a burst of restorative energy, healing allies within 12 yards for 600% of your attack power, which is a boatload of healing that you'll see in the healing meters of any Guardian Druid key, for instance. So that could be a good thing to steal for anybody that can spend Rage, which it's actually not that many specs, so maybe this is a foolish one to include. Gift of the Ox, on the other hand, whenever you take damage, you have a chance to summon a Healing Sphere. And then within the talent, it defines a Healing Sphere, so I included it. A Healing Sphere is a sphere visible only to you that you can move through to heal yourself for 300% of your attack power. So just passively spawning Healing Spheres near you as you take damage for any spec, I think would be potentially pretty cool. So potentially pretty powerful little effect for not just tanks, but for defense for anybody. Although, you do, if you don't have the Expel Harm ability, you're not going to have a way to just instantly yoink all your spheres. You're going to have to actually run over them, so maybe it's not that good. Holy Shield. Your block chance is increased by 20%, and you're able to block spells, and your successful blocks deal a small percentage of your attack power in holy damage to your attacker. Now, obviously, this would be nuts for Prot Warrior, but if this worked for anybody as well, just getting 20% block chance on, anybody, if that's how that works. I actually don't know if this multiplies your block chance by 1.2, or if this just gives you 20% chance to block, like if this took you from 0 to 20, or if this would take you from like 20 to 24, right? And take you from 0 to 0. But if it took you from 0 to 20, that's a lot of defense just for free. And then it works against spells as well. Obviously, your block is based on your block value, which maybe would be 0 for a lot of specs, so maybe that actually wouldn't do anything. But so maybe this one's kind of like After the Wildfire, where this is something that a Prot Warrior would love to steal, but not a lot of other specs would get much out of. But it certainly would be the best. I think this would be the best thing for a Prot Warrior to steal, for instance. Well, maybe After the Wildfire. I don't know. Mayhem. Now, this one also defines the ability that it gives you in the talent, so I felt like that was fair game. Your single target spells have a 25% chance to apply Havoc to a nearby enemy for 5 seconds, and it defines Havoc as marks a target with Havoc for 5 seconds, causing your single target spells to also strike the Havoc victim for 60% of the damage dealt. Imagine playing Fire Mage or something with Mayhem, and you're just bumping fireballs into a primary target, and randomly it's going to give you free fireballs and like extra casts of Phoenix Flames into extra targets and stuff. I feel like that would be really, really, really good. So in any kind of, as long as it's not like a pure single target situation. So I think this could be potentially a really good option to steal for some casters. And then finally, we got Soul Flame. This is a 2-point talent for Affliction Warlock. When you kill a target, its soul bursts into flames, dealing 40% of spell power shadow flame damage to nearby targets, dealing reduced damage beyond 8 targets. A really passive, easy to use effect. As long as you've tagged a target, it's going to explode with soul flame as it dies, and that is a lot of damage potentially. This is actually a 2-point talent, but even that first point could potentially be a pretty juicy one for some specs to take, so I figured this would be a cool talent to include as well. So there you have it. There is a look at some of the talents that exist in this game that I think are pretty cool and powerful, and hypothetically, thinking about which ones you might be interested in stealing, these were ones that jumped out. I tried to include mostly just generically powerful ones, although I'm sure that just the specs that I've played have kind of keyed me into ones that would be super OP for certain other specs, such as After the Wildfire and Holy Shield for Prot Warrior. So if there's something that you know about in another talent tree that would be broken without needing to teach yourself those class abilities that it references for your spec, put it in the comments below. We can have a talk about just what the most busted abilities are in some of these talent trees. And, if you've got your own abilities like Sharpshooter to compare to Elemental Fury that you're salty about, put those in the comments below as well if you want some of your talents to get buffed or whatever. Although, I will say, just because Elemental Fury is way better than Sharpshooter, for instance, doesn't mean that Elemental Shaman's OP and Marksmanship Hunter needs to get nerfed, right? This video was made looking at each talent in as much of a vacuum as was possible. But of course, that's not how talents actually exist, right? Talents exist in the context of where they are in the tree, what's above them, what's below them, right? All those things, how powerful the rest of the class kit is, right? Because you have some amount of power that goes into your most powerful talents, and some amount of power that, because Sharpshooter's not powerful, there gets to be more power put into the rest of the MM kit, right? And whereas because Elemental Fury is so much power, the rest of the Elemental Shaman kit gets a little bit weaker. So, this dichotomy here doesn't mean Sharpshooter's a bad talent or Elemental Fury needs to get nerfed or anything like that. It's just interesting in the context of this video, which I thought would be fun to make. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it fun as well. That was the main point here. Not really anything deeper than that. Just a video for fun. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.